It's Alexa Hampton. It is 52 Weeks Live. I beg your pardon. Oh, I beg your pardon for perhaps the worst lighting ever known to man. But we are talking to Nina Campbell, the amazing. And I've just invited her. Sorry, I was
late. Are we on? It's unbelievable.
Yay! How are you? I'm in an airport cubicle.
I'm going to turn you up a bit. Wait a minute.
Ooh, boobs.
Oh, that's better.
Hi.
Hi, it's so good to see you.
It is so good to see you. I couldn't believe your headshot didn't have your glasses on it.
Oh, didn't it?
No, it was no purple hearts. Are you wearing the hearts?
Well, they're tinted hearts. Yes, I'm definitely wearing them. I can't do anything about them.
I hear you. I hear you. So, I know I sound like I'm whispering and it's weird. I feel like I'm whispering and it's weird. But I want to tell you first, before I ask you how you started, that I was sitting next to your son one night at a dinner where we were all at.
Yeah.
And he was saying about you the kinds of things everybody wants and hopes to have a child, a grown or small or grown, say about you. He was like, could not have been more proud and more complimentary. And to those who don't know, he is a grown up. He is not a toddler. And he just thinks you're the bee's knees, as do we all.
That is very nice to hear. And I can assure you, your boys will be saying exactly the same about you when they're grown up.
My daughter,
as
maybe.
you did
I'm not sure about the boys. Cheers.
Oh, that was a good idea. I'm a bit slow on the uptake.
I know, and you're
just
5 hours ahead.
Behind. I know, I should do. Less noise.
Okay, so how did you get started?
Well, how did I get started? Well, I mean, I got started because I was so useless at everything else. I mean, I was lucky. I went to work at this wonderful shop called the General Trading Company, having been to convention, it was, and I enjoyed it because I'm bossy, and I was doing the wedding list for girls much older than me, and I was telling them what china to put with what glass. Horrified that they didn't know. I mean, they had not a clue, these girls who came.
Horrifying, disgusting, really.
I was sort of appalled. I was like 17 years old or something, and I just knew how to lay the table because we did it always at home. And I loved china and glass then, like my daughter does and my granddaughter does. So I started doing that, and then in those days you got a really mean holiday. I mean, you were allowed, I don't know, 2 weeks a year, whatever. And I had, my best friend lived in Jamaica, and I wanted to go to America, and so I went on holiday for a month. And so I had to leave. And then when I came back, I was given a job with John Fowler of Colfax and Fowler.
Right.
And I'm not quite sure why he employed me.
You just knocked on the door, or they were looking, or how did that happen?
My stepfather had a cousin who knew him. That's how things happened, way back.
But so you knew what you wanted to do.
Well, I did. It was the only thing I knew actually how to do, because I was brought up. My mother didn't understand much about toys and playgrounds, so she took me to Cole's wallpaper.
Yeah, totally.
So that's how I sort of grew up, going into shops and looking at things. So of course that was my only option. And of course, when I was little, we moved the furniture around and round and round the house. And she had a good eye, and so did my father. And then we used to get exhausted when all the furniture was outside on the landing, and then we'd go to bed. And then we had a wonderful Italian butler who used to come and put it back exactly as it had been.
First of all, I love the sentence, we had a wonderful Italian butler.
Oh, yeah, he was.
I aspire to one day be able to say those words.
I know. When life gets worse. I mean, there I was, aged, nothing, 10 till 20 when I left home, with this wonderful Italian who used to make cheese souffles and just everything heaven.
But so he ultimately got the final say if he's putting it back.
Yes, exactly. So it never made any difference. He put it back exactly as it had been. And then we started and the next week changing it around, you know. And then, so I went to work for John Fowler, and I
Did you ever have to sit him down and be like, no, this is the new way?
No, you'd never have argued with him, because there would have been a dramatic Italian scene. That would have been
no souffle for you.
And I told him very proudly that I'd been to an interior design course with Michael Inchboard. And he said to me, darling, please forget everything you learned. You know, rather sort of didn't want any difference. And so I said, oh, don't worry, Mr. Fowler, I didn't really learn anything. So he was thrilled once, because I was going to parties and, you know. And somehow he liked me, and I padded along with the bags, you know, and learned, you know, how one did then.
Feet on the ground.
Feet on the ground is the best way, really.
Well, I think now school is definitely a requirement.
Well, I have only got people from school, you know, who work for me, actually, having never been to school practically.
Right, but back in the day.
There weren't any schools, really.
No. Well, I mean, there were.
I did.
But yes, it was, yeah. I mean, we would start off at my father's office. We all started off by answering the phones.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you were lucky, a couple of years in, you'd move up.
Carry the bags, and you'd sort the samples and all of that. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Take the notes.
Yeah. That taking the notes was a huge step forward. So, you know, I think it must be interesting for people to see how young you are, given what a presence you've had in the industry for as long as you've had it.
Well, I started my own business at 22, which is sort of, I mean, like now.
Oh, that's crazy.
I employ 24-year-olds, and they've just got out of college. And they really, I don't think probably would be able to open their own. But it's a serious business now, in a way. I mean, you're responsible for so much more, and there's so much more that goes on. But I just thought, I had this idea that maybe Mr. Fowler would notice that I was absolutely useless, to sack me. Then what would I do? So I thought, whoa, well, the answer to that is to start my own business. So that was sort of...
That is hilarious.
Lateral thinking.
Totally magical thinking, but it worked. So when did you know, like, so you started taking on jobs? How big was you were employing people? How many people were you employing?
Well, actually, I had a business partner whose house I was doing. She had enormous stage. She was called Bridget Elliott. And her son is Christopher Clark. I don't know if you use his furniture. He does one. Maybe. Yeah, you may well. It's mainly, he does wonderful painting furniture and makes, you know, the bedside table and cupboards and all things. Mm-hmm. And so she and I started, it sounded like a business, because she was called Elliott and I was called Campbell. It sounded like a firm of rather dour Edinburgh lawyers, you know, Elliott and
Campbell. Why not? Sounds so respectable.
Probably thought we were respectable. And so she brought in her age group. She was sort of 20 years older than me, I suppose. And so those were the sort of married couples who'd had a child and who needed the drawing rooms done and the houses done. So that's how we started, really.
It is so surprising, though, that you started with a partner who was that much older than you and trusted you. Yeah. Like, I mean, it must have been you must have been such a prodigy that it was apparent. I know you can't say that about yourself, but it's pretty extraordinary to have that kind of sponsorship and support and identification as, like, you know, this is a proper designer.
Yes, it was rather odd, I think. But then we were known as decorators in those days.
Yeah, no. I go back and forth. I see both.
So anyway, so that's how I started, and then I eventually, suddenly I sort of thought, you know what? And then Jane Churchill came to work for me.
Sure. Oh my God, I didn't know that.
Yeah. She was Jane Wyndham at that point, and she was answering the telephones and doing all the things that you did for your father and I did for John Fowler. Yeah.
So which are totally necessary. You know, it's like somebody's going to do that work, and if it's not somebody else, it's going to have to be us.
And then I had the most wonderful girl work for me, who was the accountant, and she was called Sylvia Bliss, and she was absolute bliss. I mean, I wish I knew where she was now. She was heaven. So there we sat, and we did something quite clever, actually. We went to an office. We took a little room and a tiny room for Miss Bliss, and so she could sort of count the pennies without, you know, hearing us going on.
Yeah.
And that was in an architect's office of somebody called Alan Gore. It was called Gore, Given and Saunders. And so there were the architects, the garden designers and the engineers. And it was rather good to be in that. So, there were all these rather serious people who actually had been trained all around. So you could call on them, or we did jobs together quite often.
Right. They would feed.
Yeah. And then there was a wonderfully sort of wonderful looking crazy girl behind a counter who was the receptionist.
Mm-hmm.
And she was rather Russian and crazy in heaven.
Rather Russian.
Rather Russian, yes. I'm not sure. I think she might have just aspired to be Russian,
I aspire to be a Russian.
Oh, me too. I agree.
So it was you and Colfax and Fowler, and who else? Who were the big names in town?
There was George Spencer. There was Peggy Hancock at George Spencer. There was all of that. And Mr. Fowler rather witheringly used to talk about being in Mayfair. He used to talk about Sloane's, my dear child, you don't want to go and work for a Sloane Street decorator.
Yeah.
So I sort of didn't know what he meant, but I said, oh no, of course not.
Did we get the Sloane Ranger from that?
I suppose so, yes.
Wasn't there, I think there was like the preppy handbook. There was the Sloane Ranger handbook.
And the scarf around the handbag and all that business.
Yeah. I aspire to be that too. Once tested.
Bad not to be that.
Yes. No. I've got a ways to go. So when did you get into product? I mean, it seems like you've been with Osborne and Little forever. You love pattern. You're not phoning it in. It's not just like commonplace, like your favorite, the Meredith. These are proper designed things.
Yeah. Well, I tell you how that happened. And I was doing a house in Scotland, and there was a wonderful man. There was a company in London called Tisunique, and there was a lovely man who ran it, and he had this little print, which I loved. And I wanted to wall out the whole of this bedroom in Scotland for a client in it. And it was a massive room, and it was suffering from dry rot, and the whole thing was taken to pieces. He was a great fisherman, and these people had a river with rods on it. So I said to them, look, he's discontinued this fabric, but if I can arrange a day's fishing for him, he might just print it specially.
Wow.
Done. So he printed it specially for us. And then I said, I love it so much. I'd like to use it. I'd just like to make product out of it. And would you mind? He said, no, you have it. I'd love you to have it. It was a little crisscross, and it was the foundation of our sprig design, which made we printed it in fabric, and it made all the bedspreads and bed covers and hangers and Kleenex boxes and all the things we still do today.
And how old were you at this point when you were doing that?
Oh, I was probably getting on. I was about 25.
Yes, you were definitely getting on.
So,
where does that come from? Like, as you said, your mother took you to shops and stuff, but you had not been groomed to suddenly launch a business and then launch product in an era when a lot of product, it was pre-nascent.
Well, it was, but there was an awful lot of strange things happening. I mean, I'd been to Venice at that point, and I saw that wonderful. Well, actually, I'd been in New York, and there was that company. Do you remember, with all the paper, Italian paper, box files and everything? It was called.
You don't mean Fortuny?
No, not Fortuny. It was paper. It was Italian paper.
Oh, Il Papiro?
No, I can't remember now. I just remember.
It's with the ink dragged.
Yeah, well, no, it's just the Italian paper. And the company in Italy was called Piazzese. And I wanted to write to them because I wanted to go and buy the paper and make the boxes in England.
Yes.
Because the filing things for your desk were just grey.
Yes, yeah.
So I then, you used to go to Ryman's and take the labels off the back, and sometimes they were, there was the name of the man who made it. So there was this poor wretched man. I mean, he had perfectly happy life, living somewhere in a suburb, making with a factory. He'd come out of the RAF, had a very nice wife and a very comfortable house, and this factory making boxes. And I suddenly ring him up one day, and I launch myself on him, and I go with my pile of Italian papers, and I say, would you consider making box files? He said, well, not really, because we make one. How many do you want? I said, well, I could have 20. Like it was a sort of huge order.
A bulk order.
Bulk order, and so he said, well, I don't know really. It would sort of, but I said, well, could we just go and talk to the girls in the factory? Because I knew they were girls, and I knew that when they saw this paper, they would think, oh God, this is better than that awful old grey stuff going to Ryman. And so, of course, I went down and they all said, oh my God, this is so fantastic. Can we do it? So that's how I got in. So his nice, calm RA life was completely upended. And
but where does this beautiful young woman get so brazen?
I don't know. I suppose I don't
Where
know.
did this come from?
If you don't know any better, you just sort of think, well, why not?
And was that just it? Just
was,
why not? Just.
And then, you know, they were thrilled until eventually he sold his company to somebody much bigger. And actually, we still go on doing it, you know, still going on that. And then I found somebody who liked stitching. All the houses in Eaton Square have porters. And all the porters' wives are Portuguese, and they sit in their basement and they sew.
Is that just laziness, being a Portuguese porter?
Oh, probably the main.
They just wanted to keep the same 4 letters beginning it.
Same name, just Portuguese porter. And they're all naturally probably idle, but the wives beaver away making money. And I had a great friend who, when I started my shop with Mark Burley, he said, let's have cushions. So this wonderful girl called Flicky Downer, she was called then, Flicky Pedal, she made cushions. She was a beautiful model, but she wanted to give up modeling and she wanted to sew.
She wanted to give up modeling for cushion making.
Yeah.
You gotta love it.
So she made the cushion. We just had the best time. And then we went with this little shop we had in Pimlico Road. And then I went to Fauchon in Paris. And I just asked Mr. Fauchon if we could sell his chocolates. And he was so mesmerized. He was mesmerized not by me, actually. He was mesmerized by Mark Burley, who was so, you know.
Sure.
And so he was just, and Mark Burley was tall and elegant, and Mr. Borry was round and valiant. And somehow, I don't know, Mark just rolled him over and said, well, we'll be selling all your chocolates. And so we bought them and we sold them in our shop and mustard for weekend presents.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the landlords came along and said we didn't have a license for food. And we said, well, it's not really food, you know, come on.
It's a trifle.
It's mustard. What's that?
Yeah.
And we took it into London and the customs men sampled most of it. So all the boxes had been opened and the chocolates had been eaten. But, you know, eventually it all settled down and, you know.
So where were your kids in this evolution?
Well, they hadn't quite arrived because I actually, while I had the shop, Nina Campbell and Mark Burley in Pimlico Road, I had my first child. And I remember leaving hospital, having given birth to Rita, and thinking I better just check in at the shop on the way home from the hospital carrying the baby. They nearly fainted when they saw me come through the door. But I did have, this was all made possible for me by the most wonderful Jessie Webb, who came into my life in the hospital and stayed with me for the next 18 years after my children.
Yeah.
And she's still in my life.
Hats off.
Exactly. I mean,
to the wonderful people.
Yeah. So the Danilo, the Italian butler who made my life possible as a child, and Jessie Webb, my nanny, who made my life possible with the children, and their life actually, because this, you know.
And then what?
Well, their life was made possible by her running, you know, making sure everything happened, and they were fed 3 times a day, and you know, all of that.
And where is she now?
She came and had lunch yesterday, and she's, you know, absolutely amazing, and she's extraordinary with children. I mean, however ghastly badly some child's behaving, she suddenly reads them a book, and they sit there like
mesmerized.
That's right.
Yeah, that's definitely a gift. When I had the boys, certainly having you know, twins, and it's just like, oh my God, I need professional help. Yeah. I need someone to teach me how to do this properly, and I need someone with the gift.
It is a gift, and those people have a gift. It's
a gift. It's the most important gift. It's right up there with teachers.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you had Rita first, and then how far later did you have your son?
3 years later, I had Max. And then that marriage for bits, and then I met my second husband, and 3 more years later, 6 years later, I had Alice.
Got it.
Who was the youngest. And Jessie stayed all the way, you know, there was Jessie sort of staying all the way through.
So I know that Max works with you, and obviously Rita is an acclaimed designer.
Yeah.
What does your third child do?
She's got a very interesting eye, and she's just done a job for sort of under our wing slightly, but very much on her own, and it's really interesting to see it. And I'm hoping to persuade her to do a bit more because it's really interesting. But she also does the sort of PR bits on the Instagram and when helping me get the lectures ready and all that sort of thing. So
I do know what you're talking about as I sit here Instagramming in an airport. It's such a weird part of our lives, though. It's a happy part for me.
Well, I just love having my children with me around all the time because, it's just, I don't know, I just feel I'm very lucky, actually. I'm not one of those very English people who like to sort of say goodbye to their children at 8 and really never see them again, except possibly when they get married or when you die.
Yeah.
And they funeral.
You let them speak.
Yes, exactly.
You encourage interaction.
Exactly.
And when I sat with Max and he was telling me about his extraordinary childhood and what a model, what an exemplar you were as a working mother. I didn't ask him when he a few years ago.
Funny enough, he went after school. He came out and he didn't want to go to university and he wanted to start working immediately. He went off gap year, went off around the world. Well, not quite around the world, India, Nepal, and then came back, and then he went to South America. And then he came back and he went to work. He then told me that he'd have loved to have been an architect, and which I hadn't really known. And also, architects need something that he couldn't do very well. I think it was maths, something like that. Right. And so, well, it's useful, isn't it, when you're sort of measuring things. And so worked for an estate agent because he was fascinated with houses. And when he went in, he used to come home and say to me, "Mum, you can't imagine how, these people are trying to sell their house and they haven't even made the bed. It's just sort of disgusting, And he'd noticed all these things, which I was thrilled by. And then he got over that. And he went to work for a kitchen planner, and that he really enjoyed. And then he came to me and he said, I'm really, I don't know why you haven't asked me to join the company. And I said, well, darling, I just wouldn't have dared ask you to join the company.
You were giving him space.
Because I'd have hated you to have said no. And I just didn't think that, I felt you would want to do your own thing. So he came and he's, so that's how I joined. And of course, it's wonderful for me to have that.
It is wonderful.
Yeah, and he's really a team leader. He's a sportsman, so he knows how to get people to work together.
And he's a giant.
Yeah, he is in every respect, actually. And the other thing that's interesting about him, having been an only child, I've always been rather single-minded and sort of thought, well, I'll just do it myself and blah, blah, blah. Or not do it myself and hope somebody else will do it, which is quite likely. But Max being used to he was always the captain of the team. And that was because he was so good at getting people to
work together.
Remembering the things you have to do to sort of, get them going.
So as an impeccable businesswoman who has seen all kinds of, I'm sure you've seen it all. Well, you've certainly pioneered things and definitely pioneered them as a woman designer, decorator, whatever you want to call it. What do you think about what's happening right now? Obviously, with COVID is what I mean.
Well, it's funny. What is extraordinary is how we've all managed. We particularly were very lucky because at the beginning of COVID, we happened to be at the beginning, the drawing stages of lots of. That just happened to be very fortunate.
Right. That point in the cycle is critical.
Critical. If we'd been trying to install, it would have been hell. In fact, we are trying to install in New York. Luckily, our clients are out in California, not having any intention of coming back to New York.
Good.
But we've got everything sitting there waiting to go up, and we can't get there. And God knows when we can get there. But so that, and this is the second time I've done that. 28 years ago, I did it the first time doing it, and so we know each other very well. But otherwise, what I think has been extraordinary is realizing that you actually can do an awful lot on. We work with a thing called Teams. But it's a bit,
please explain to me this term, Teams.
Well, it's all fantastic.
What is this word?
Well, I didn't. It's some sort of strange person has started this magical thing, and you join, and you have and off, top. It's fantastic, And I can push a button, and there we all are. And you can be wherever. You sometimes have to push the picture off so they can't see you making another cup of coffee or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But we've managed to work. I was with in COVID. Joanna, who works for me, went to her parents in Sussex, the architects, you just bring them back, just extraordinary. Move that radiator, do this, change the windows, let's do this. So an awful lot can be achieved, which I don't think it would have moved quickly if it hadn't been for COVID. I think we were all there, but we weren't really on it, and
Right.
we really didn't believe in it that time.
Is there a lot of building going on? Because in America,
London's crazy with building.
yeah, like we're all the builders. Many of the builders never stopped. They either were considered essential or they just kept going.
Yeah, and also poor things are outdoors in the fresh air, death. Well, in the beginning, and now boiling hot in the heat. But no, the building's going on. Not only, I mean, in the street that I live, 3 done and moved into all this time. So there's a lot of people, and everyone's going to leave England for Brexit, but I mean, they seem to be moving in.
So also, is everybody doing what they're doing here, which is, you notice that all of these people are buying houses. They're fleeing. Yeah. They're fleeing the cities. Hopefully not forever. I mean, I certainly think there'll be, cycles as there always are.
Yeah.
Are you feeling that urgency to get out and get these new? Like, do you have this huge housing boom?
Well, I think you're saying what a lot of people are renting houses in.
They're renting.
You can't rent a house in the country to save your life. So I'm sure people are buying, and I think the buying is, but I think there's a lot of uncertainty as well here. So I think a bit of a rent market is really busy.
I think I think people are buying and then they're like holding their breath.
Yeah.
To see what next. Are the locusts going to descend on us?
Yeah. I think you just have to think positive and carry on.
Sure. Well, that's very British.
Yeah.
And it's a good lesson.
People are coming into the shop on Walton Street and saying, "Oh my God, I've sort of eaten off those plates 3 meals a day for 3 months. I just want new." So that's because nobody stayed home for such a long time.
I felt that way about my bedding. I ordered new bedding. I feel like a lot of people are ordering bedding.
Yeah.
It's like these things that you have to be able to. We all have to be able to get things that are immediately available right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And those people with shops, or I walked in somewhere the other day and bought a sofa and left with it. I
did a television program once a long time ago, and there was this wonderful woman who came, and I was sort of moderating, and she was dressed head to toe in leopard and pink marabou, and she was simply wonderful from the north of England. And she showed her drawing room, and there was this sort of 12-foot leopard covered sofa, and she said on the television, "I went into this shop and there it was, and I just had to have it." And the salesman promised to deliver it the next day. I said, "I bet he did. He must have had a raise for actually getting rid of it."
So thrilled. What did she say when you said that?
Well, I didn't, because luckily she was on the television, and I was just thinking to myself,
Yeah. I do think
marvelous.
that animal skins are almost like a neutral.
Yes.
But maybe not in that quantity.
That one wasn't actually. That was sort of, off the peg. No.
Yeah, unless you're Givenchy, you should probably take a step back.
Yeah, exactly. That French one, which is divine, which costs about $300.
Yes. The silk velvet.
Yeah, the silk velvet. I bought that one when I was doing my book with Geraldine Stutz for Elsie de Wolfe. Geraldine thought that the cover of the Elsie de Wolfe book should be leopard and lipstick red Elsie, as she signed her name.
Yeah. Sort of Vreeland-esque.
Bought for £300 this yard of this stuff years ago when I was walking through Bloomingdale's book department, and I saw a leopard skin cover, and I thought, my God, Geraldine didn't tell me the book was already out. Anyway, I went nearer, and it was called Dictator Decorating, and it was just all the most vulgar things that had ever been done. by people.
Oh, sort of like Gaddafi's
Yes, exactly.
bedroom.
When it was pre-Gaddafi, it was sort of Hitler and Ceausescu called, and it was all those sort of people's decorating. It was the most hysterical thing you've seen in your life. But
I think everyone watching this, or who watches this, as I will, are going to seek out that book.
Yes, you've got to go on Amazon. There'll be a rush.
Dictator Decorating sounds like maybe the greatest book I've ever heard of.
Cover. That was amazing. And so, of course, we had to drop that. Something more tasteful.
Well, I'm sure you know this because we would all do this. Like people would take those samples and turn them into pillows.
Yeah.
So they started putting that big
ring in the middle. I know.
Ring in the middle. And when Kravitz bought, Brunchfig and Lee Joffa, at one point, word on the street was that they were tweaking the colors. So I called up Carrie Kravitz and I said, I don't care if they have the rings. Any old samples you have, any wing samples, anything, can I have them? And he's like, sure. And, I mean, it's not huge quantities, but I think it was very orange back in the day, like had more orange in it.
Yeah.
So I have those samples moldering somewhere, waiting to be cherished by me.
Yes, right. They can, I don't know, who cares about the ring in the middle? It could be rather stylish.
There's got to be a way to deal with that, like a beautiful piece of trim, or I don't know, get some, just look chicly tattered.
Yeah, exactly.
What I call waspy decrepitude. So, well, what?
Maybe nearly Russian.
Falling apart isn't Russian, though.
Well, not today.
Not today.
The old Russians fell apart a bit.
I feel like I'm falling apart a bit. I've got that part down. So I just took my first trip, and here I am in like a little cubicle in the Delta Club with my mask.
Oh my God.
And it is really weird. Have you been on a plane? I love that. I love that because I
went on a plane. Yes, I went to Greece.
I hate it. For work or for fun?
For fun. I went for a month.
Okay, we don't want to talk about that anymore. No more out of you.
Ellis. And I went.
What month was this?
I went on July the 23rd. The plane was completely empty, practically empty. And I went to stay with friends in Greece. So I went touring all around, and then I ended up in Corfu and came back. And luckily, I got back in. Oh, look, it's called Dictated Style.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Oh my God, we have to get it. And yes, Trudy, I'm sorry I'm whispering. I'm in public, so I'm trying to be respectful instead of unleashing my usual booming voice. My very American, loud American.
That was okay. And we were then allowed to go and come back but now you can't go anywhere or come back from anywhere.
You're not allowed to travel? The English?
Well, no, because if we do, we're quarantined coming back. So I haven't got 2 weeks that I can stay at home.
So I just, as I got on this plane, day before yesterday, I read the Times, and that moment, Cuomo had added the state where I was going to the quarantine list.
Oh, you mean you can't move state?
No. So I have to go home and go straight into quarantine.
Oh, God.
So,
where are you now?
I'm in the Midwest. I'm going to be vague. Okay. I'm in the Midwest. I'm flying home, and then I'm going to drive out to Southampton and go into the pool house with my dog, and make my husband leave my meals outside the door. Have you met my husband?
No, but maybe I'll keep him outside your door these days, delivering food through the letterbox.
I need to drag him to High Point so we can all hang out at some point.
We definitely make up that. Somebody had a really good idea that you could, if you had a front door with a letterbox, you could put your fingers out and you could have a manicure the other side if you were. Yeah. Don't you think you'd have the manicurist the other side?
And I need a manicure.
Yeah.
It's getting a little unmanageable. They're getting so long that when I type, it's become gobbledygook. Look, Arabelle Pillowmaker wants to meet my husband. I want you to meet him. He's adorable.
We all want to meet. There'll be a queue.
For a long time, I felt like you don't know what is it called? Sesame Street. Have you heard of Sesame Street?
Yes.
So I felt like I don't call in my chits and ask him to go to tons of industry things because obviously we have to split things for the kids' schools and, schedules do not permit. So I don't get on his case and drag him to things. So for a long time, I think people thought I was just making him up. he was Snuffleupagus from Sesame Street. But there have been sightings. He does exist.
I've seen pictures.
Yeah. So are you going to High Point? No.
Well, I don't know. No, we don't know anything. I mean, you can't even plan next week.
I mean, I'm going. My plan is to go.
Yeah, you won't be able to get to America.
Yeah.
But I'd quite like to go in January to Atlanta.
I'd quite like to go to Atlanta in January.
But I mean, only because there's a trade show, and you know what? And I think we're launching China. Here's my.
You're launching. Oh, look at that beauty.
This is Theo. Rather fed up with
Theo. What is? I don't know what he is besides adorable.
You want to know my theory about COVID?
Yeah.
I think the dogs invented the disease so that we all had to stay home and look after them.
Well, I got a dog. I got a COVID dog.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I'm a COVID dog person, and he is delightful.
You can take him for a walk.
Oh, I'm with him all the time.
Oh, look at him.
I feel guilty being, out of town.
Well, Theo's thrilled that I've been practicing home. I haven't been going tripping around doing things.
I do worry that they're all going to be sort of traumatized when
they come to work with me. I go to the office, they come with me.
Yeah, that's my intention to bring.
My worry is that Twixie, who's my other dog, I've inherited, who's a Lebanese vegetarian, he likes the DHL men's ankles somewhat. He doesn't.
As do I. Who doesn't like the nice turn of a DHL ankle? I'm also available for UPS and
the UPS is he hasn't actually drawn blood, but he just frightens the death out of them as they drop the parcels.
Yeah. Well, he's got to keep them on their feet.
Yeah, that's what he does. It's his job.
Your guard dog. So what are your licensing? What products do you cover now?
Well, we're about to do China, which is roughly
right. And who are you doing that with?
We're doing it with an English company.
And you just walked in the door and you were like, "Can you do this for me?"
Somebody wonderful that I've known for ages, and she has Halcyon Days, and she's an incredible woman, and I've always wanted to work with her. And finally, we've made it happen, and we're launching it quite soon. I think
is this going to be something that we all need to buy? It's so beautiful that we're all going to buy it, and you're going to ruin our pocketbooks.
English bone china made in India, and I'm sort of beginning to be a bit sort of, thinking I want to have things made here, if we can.
Of course.
Partly because you can get them, And we do our own furniture, and we work with oomph. Don't you love oomph?
Of course, I love oomph. I love a little oomph. I do a UPS ankle.
That deal was born on the back of a rum dum. We were all sitting, Amy and the whole crew were sitting in Nassau having rum dums. And why didn't we sell the fabric? Why didn't we sell the furniture? So that's what we did.
And Osborne and Little you've been with for forever. I was just, they're staples.
Well, maybe, 35 years or something. Wow. And on it goes,
And on it goes.
Yeah.
What haven't you done that you'd like to do? Uh-oh. I feel judged.
Do you feel judged? He's wagging his tail and barking. This is his toy of choice.
Oh my God. Is that Boris or Donald?
Well, they're pretty much, they've got both.
Yeah. God, it's so good. It's so good. The face looks like Donald, but the hair looks like Boris. That's a very confusing one.
But I think they're both orange, and they both got blonde hair that needs a bit of a trim.
Yeah.
But never mind.
So what haven't you done that you want to do still in terms of product? Because it's interesting that you started your career with the table settings.
I know.
And that you're finally, I don't know what took you so long.
Well, I tell you why, because I think I would have loved to have done something. I would have loved to have done something in America with one of those big tabletop companies.
Sure.
And I would have loved to have worked maybe in France, but the English market, we did talk to, the Spode, but the English China market has taken a bit of a beating, I think. And people aren't buying. I mean, what I love is going to China shops in America. Right, you go into Greenwich, you go to Southampton, you go to New Orleans, all over the place. You always walk into an incredible shop because Americans still buy wonderful tabletop and enjoy that, I think, very much. Whereas
nice.
the English aren't doing that so much.
They don't register or when they get married.
Not to that extent. I mean, you can imagine Rita has endless sort of,
Sure.
stuff, and I have endless stuff, and of course lots of friends. But on the whole,
Maybe they're inheriting.
They're inheriting, or there's a lot of French china, the Bernardeau and the all of the.
Sure.
But the English company, Stoke-on-Trent, it was rather sad. They took a bit of a back seat, and they haven't really recovered.
Well, I'm a Spode girl.
Yes, yeah.
I have Bernardeau as well, but I mean the as you can imagine, the Greek Spode is my absolute favorite.
And I do love old plates. Collecting.
What colors are your plates?
Well, fun enough, I had quite a lot. There was a set from Bernardeau called Henriette Rose, and I thought, well, I'll buy that for Henrietta with the, so that's all pinks. Then I had quite a lot of amethyst glass from William Yeowood, and then I built up
My
pinks.
favorite. Amethyst. I love amethyst glass.
Love that. And then Nazon and Moretti's red glass. So my table's always reds and purples and pinks and things like that.
Oh my God, my favorite.
And then my tablecloths was quite often saris, red and gold saris, because I've got a long, thin table, and that sort of works. And now I've gone into green and white.
Green and white.
My mariage has painted me some green rims, and I've started to buy green glass.
Because I don't love eating off of blue.
Well, I don't mind eating off, but it's got to be Spode blue and white. But that means.
But I mean, I like that, but I don't like that for dinner.
No, I agree.
I can do it for breakfast or for lunch, but for some reason, blue feels inappropriate for me.
For dinner, yeah.
And is that weird?
My green and white is more borders only on a white plate because I think the food looks better on white.
You want to see the food.
But then I go to Morocco. There's a wonderful place where you can get table linen. And I've got dark green placemats with white edging and then white napkins with green edging. So that I've sort of
Tales of an addict. So it launches in January because, of course, we'd love to see it. Everybody would love to see you post it as soon as possible.
Posted, I'll let you know exactly at the minute that I have the samples. At the moment, I've got sort of just photographs. And
we will be.
When you put the decals on and they're not really properly polished on, they're just on, just to get excited.
No, I do not know.
Oh, what you see
the process. That's what they do.
A bit of a factory freak. I like going to factories and seeing how it's made.
For sure. So they put decals on and then
float the thing on, and you can do it. You don't fire it necessarily, so you can do all the sample. You can get a proper sample, or ready to look at, so that you can say, I don't like it before. Let's put that somewhere else. And,
So great. I mean, that's actually, I don't know. I think obviously the beginning of jobs is everybody loves that. The end of jobs, everybody loves that.
Yeah.
And then the product design, fiddling with an object is really exciting.
I agree. I totally agree. And then you've got that moment, like with the fabrics. You've done all the. I mean, I have a girl who works for me. She's a brilliant weaver, and we do all the threads of how. And you get so excited. The parcel arrives back from Italy, and you think it's going to be glorious, and then it's like, somehow it just works. You have to start.
Yeah, occasionally we all have to fire ourselves.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, oops, I'm fired.
Exciting. And then you think, why did some people, there's some big press with tissue paper, some sort of roll them up and stick them in the bag, and you think, did they really want to sell this? Or, or you say something, and they use the nastiest colors for the trial.
Yeah.
Brown and orange woven together, and they say, well, this is the trial, you can do the rub tests on. And you think, really, it's so depressing.
Yeah, I will not be rubbing that.
No. I would love
it away from me. By the way, I don't know if if you've heard of Taco Bell, but it is, of course, beloved by me.
Well,
So you can take the Taco Bell hot sauce, this is something we would do in the office when my father was alive. We knew, because we had tried, if you put the Taco Bell hot sauce on a penny, you can clean it up like it's just been minted.
Oh, wow.
It takes all of the corrosion. I mean, God only knows what's in that sauce. So that's our go-to test
Meaning
thing for if something will stain, the Taco Bell hot sauce. So this is my gift to you. I'm giving you this tip.
Well, I should go and buy some immediately. You may have to ship.
I might have to ship it to you, but
Yeah.
I would be happy to
I did on one of my journeys across America. I was starving. I was going between Jacksonville and somewhere else in Florida to do a talk at lunchtime, no chance of food. So I went into a Subway, and I went in, and two women, and
the shop, not the underground means of transportation.
And I went in and I said, I excuse me, very English. I said, excuse me. I've never been into a Subway before, so would you explain how this operates? So she said, she took this thing and she said, oh, this is the Subway. It was about 2 foot long. And she said, there's 7 items. And I looked at these little trays and they all looked absolutely disgusting except for the plastic cheese slices and the tomato slices. And I said, oh, no, it's all right. Thank you so much. I'll just have the tomato and the cheese. So she was mesmerized that I didn't want all these other horrible things.
Yeah.
And then I said, do you have anything smaller than this mountain, this long thing? And she said, oh, we have pita bread. So, I used to Lebanon and places like that. And I said, oh, pita bread, that's fantastic. So the thing came up, looked like a flannel that I might have found in the bottom of Max's sort of football case a year after he'd been to school. It was disgusting. And so she wrapped tomato and cheese, and I've never been back.
You need to watch 5 Easy Pieces one more time with Jack Nicholson, where he orders the toast. They're like, we don't have toast, so he orders the grilled cheese. Hold the cheese, hold the vessel, so you can get the toast.
Definitely. Well, I think the ladies who I went, they must be telling the same story about this lunatic that came in having never been into a Subway.
No, I think they must have been charmed. It sounds like you approach Subway the same way you approach textile factories. Like, please show me how this is done. I'm interested. Is this a decal or is that a salami? Anyway.
Knowing how it's done, because then you can always tell them possibly they could try it a different way, and they do.
Oh my God, I love that this is your thought process. This is more revealing than maybe anything else. Talking about how you would redo this Subway.
Yes, well, I tell you, if I owned nobody would have one because they'd love all the gherkins and slimy. They put it. My Subway would be so kind of different.
Yeah, it would be different, but it would be beautiful, and I would buy it.
Yeah, be smoked salmon and delicious sort of salmon salad, things like that.
Oh, I don't know, salmon. That's a hard sell. It's delightful to eat, but I don't want to be around anyone who's just had some salmon.
Well, don't come anywhere near me. I'm taking lobsters to the country on the train. That'll be in a cold bag, but that will be, my grandchildren love lobsters, and so I'm taking them on the train.
But lobster doesn't smell the way salmon does.
Well, they're quite smelly. Anyway, I thought I'll have the whole carriage to myself.
Okay, somebody's asking if there are more secrets, and they probably don't mean the Taco Bell hot sauce. Do you have any fun, goofy, or profound tips that you would like to share?
Well, I think, you know perfectly well that I think that actually designing for people is literally about, and making it beautiful is about 10% of the work of an interior designer. And I'm afraid, absolutely being so meticulous about all the note taking and the sizes and the quantities and all of that. So people waft into the business, I think, thinking, oh, they've got an eye and it's all going to be such fun.
Sure.
God, and they don't realize that, So I think anybody going into this business has to know.
You would like to deeply discourage the people listening to this, is your message.
Yes, exactly. All those would-bes. But I think that the joy, today I sat with a wonderful fellow that we're working with doing the job, and it was just so exciting. When you sit with somebody that you respect and they understand language and, they really, and you sort of know that you're going to get somewhere and it's going to be beautiful. Yeah. That's really very exciting.
It is so thrilling.
And then
it's so rewarding.
Somewhere, and as you say, the end of a job is so lovely when you sort of go in and, fluff it up. and
Yeah,
just
if you can make them cry, I consider that an especial pleasure.
yes, I did do that once to somebody.
In the good way.
So
Not
beautiful.
cry with horror.
Yeah,
Cry with joy.
God. No, just was so, we done it got it ready a bit sooner than they anticipated, and that is lovely. And it's actually rather nice going back into something you've done quite a long time ago, and thinking that not thinking, oh God, what the hell was I doing? Just thinking how marvelous I can still.
Yeah, it
sit
works.
here. But I think I don't know. I think you've just got to remember that the client actually is the person living there, not you.
Yeah, I think that's huge.
And try and make them a place that's comfortable, that they don't feel, what is it thing you want to wear the dress. You don't want the dress to wear you. And I think the house is the same thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. It has to be authentic. Feels like a very overused word at this moment in time, but you want it to represent them.
Yeah.
It's got to be true to them.
Yeah, totally. And they have to. I mean, you have to get to know somebody really well and really respect them and listen to them. And I mean, we ask the most questions of people. Their dressing rooms. Do they hang this? Do they with their where do they put their costume jewelry? Where do they want their reels? Where do how do they like shoes? Do they hang their shirts? What do they do with their all of these?
How do
things.
they use their house? Do they entertain? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for letting me hit you up today and for being late. And yes, somebody is saying that it's almost a psychologist's job, and yes, I think every decorator would agree.
And a diplomat.
Yeah, and peacemaker.
How do you move that ugly piece of furniture from the middle of the room, possibly into another room? And you usually find out. I mean, sometimes.
So how do you?
I always say, it's a lovely piece, but I think it's a bit overscaled for in here. How about let's put it in another room, and then you pray that
the garage feels big enough for this.
Exactly. And then you pray that they don't ask you to come back and do that room later, where you've got all these hideous bits of furniture. But sometimes, it's the mother-in-law's piece of furniture that they've never dared.
Totally. My father once told me you have to be careful how many times you say no.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's interesting.
There's ways of saying no.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll
there's
revisit.
No. And then there's no. There's no.
What is it about the word no you don't understand? N-O. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
no, I like to tell homeowners that I will mock them. I'm like, you can have this, but I will make fun of you behind your back. No, that's only if I'm really cozy with them. I try not to say those things.
Cozy with people, don't you? I mean, it is not nice. I mean, you do end up having pretty good friends.
Very good friends.
Yeah.
And sometimes family. Like it's you love them to pieces.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I love you to pieces.
I love you.
And I am going to release you into the wild because I'm going to get on my plane so I can breathe on my face and brew bad.
Oh, what I did. What is absolutely brilliant. I've just bought this at Santa Maria Novella. It's a spray. It's like a antiseptic spray for the inside of your mask.
Does it smell amazing?
Delicious. It smells.
Is it from that soap store at Santa
Yeah.
Maria?
It's a cleansing spray, but it sounds better in Italian. It's igienizzante.
Okay, everything about you, your Italian butler, your trip to Greece, and oh, darling, Santa Maria Novella. I'm filled with envy, but I'm curbing it because there's affection.
Well, that's the thing. And listen, lots of love. Have a good flight. I'm
Thank you.
Sitting in my garden.
And I can't wait to see you in January, I hope, or whenever, to celebrate the launch of the plates. That is so exciting.
Well, it's exciting, and all sorts of lovely things. We'll be together and we'll drink to ourselves.
We shall. All right. Kisses.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.